Good morning. Psalm 66 is part of a hymn that extols God's mighty deeds on behalf of God's people. Verses 1 through 12 are oriented toward the Israelites and how God saved them, pointing specifically to God saving them at the Red Sea. But the psalm concludes with the testimony of an individual who thanks God for rescuing them out of a time of trial. Make a joyful noise to God, all the earth. Sing the glory of his name. Give to him glorious praise. Say to God, how awesome are your deeds. Because of your great power, your enemies cringe before you. All the earth worships you. They sing praises to you. Sing praises to your name. Selah. Come and see what God has done. He is awesome in his deeds among mortals. He turned the sea into dry land. They passed through the river on foot. There we rejoiced in him, who rules by his might forever, whose eyes keep watch on the nations. Let the rebellious not exalt themselves. Selah. Bless our God, O peoples. Let the sound of his praise be heard, who has kept us among the living and has not let our feet slip. For you, O God, have tested us. You have tried us as silver is tried. You brought us into the net. You laid burdens on our backs. You let people ride over our heads. We went through fire and through water. Yet you have brought us out to a spacious place. Thanks be to God for these words of life.
Well, here I am again. It's the second time in 9 years. Well, you say that now. You say that now. All right, so when Mike asked me to preach, I guess you've noticed that there's no pastoral staff here today. So you're stuck with the musicians and the sound guy. When Mike asked me to preach, I got pretty excited because I have a lot of sermons that I'm dying to preach. Anyone who knows me knows that. So when I asked about the text, knowing that we were doing the Lord's Prayer, I was like, so what part of the prayer do I get? And then when I found out it was save us in the time of temptation, I was like, really? I mean, first of all, I wrote the book on temptation. But other than that, I feel like I am the wrong person to do this because in my adult life, I have refused to pray that part of the prayer. Because I truly believe that God does not lead us into temptation. And because during seminary, I learned that the Greek word that's translated as temptation actually means trial, like a literal trial before the courts. So now when that part of the prayer comes, I pray, save us in the time of trial. As we have learned, Jesus shared this model prayer with the poor. We just had 2 weeks about debts and debtors, and now Jesus is having the people pray that they will be delivered in the time of being tried. And goes on to say, and deliver us from evil, which a more accurate translation is this: deliver us from the evil man, the one falsely putting us on trial. Now we have this information, let us not be led into trial, and deliver us from the evil man. I could go into more detail about how the poor in Jesus' time were oppressed and were often falsely accused and taken to trial for acts that they had not committed, just to keep them in their place from rising in society, which is important to our understanding of the scripture. But this morning, I would like to explore what this part of the prayer means for us. in the western suburbs of Chicago, in Hinsdale. Therapy has taught me a lot about myself and why I behave like I behave, and has taught me to recognize my triggers. One of the things I really struggle with is my self-worth. It is always right underneath the surface. Even when I am feeling most confident, I have that nagging inner voice that says things like, "You are not worthy. You are a fraud. You are ugly. You're fat. You don't deserve love or success or fill in the blank." Did I mention I have a little bit of body dysmorphia? I know I'm not alone in that. Do any of you have that inner voice? That inner voice that puts you on trial? It can and often creates a battle of trying to avoid that voice and actually believing that voice. That inner voice, that voice is the evil man. In your mercy, save me in the time of trial. When I hear that voice, honestly, sometimes I give in to it. But lately I'm recognizing it more and consciously replacing it with, I am worthy. I am loved. I am deserving. And looking at that voice for exactly what it is, a fraud. You see, I am a precious child of the source of all that is. What words do you need to give yourself when that inner voice of the evil man puts you on trial? Know that you are loved and born of love. Save us in the time of trial. Now, this may come as a big shock to you. Well, it may be if you've never been here before, this could come as a big shock to you, but I think it's pretty obvious. I'm gay. I seek out queer spaces where I can feel safe. It is one of the reasons I moved to Chicago. I live in a neighborhood where I can walk hand in hand with my husband freely and safely. When we go out of town, we seek out safe spaces, spaces where we will belong. It would not be safe for us to walk hand in hand in many towns in our own country. And much of this is because the church, extremist groups, and ignorance have put and are putting us on trial and found us guilty. Did you know that suicide is the second leading cause of death among young people, with LGBTQ youth being 4 times more likely to consider suicide, to make a plan for suicide, and to attempt suicide versus their peers? The Trevor Project estimates that there are 13 to 24 attempts of suicide every 45 seconds in the US for the LGBTQIA community. Oh Lord, have mercy and save us in the time of trial. So, it's a little triggering, as you can imagine, when a church puts the LGBTQIA community, puts me on trial. Now, this is going to sound harsh, but please hear me out. Not only is the church putting me and the queer community on trial, so is the Union Church of Hinsdale. Now, before you get too antsy, let me explain. I have so many friends that will never step foot into a sacred space because of how the church has treated them, simply for who they are. The future of whether we at the Union Church of Hinsdale affirm all God's children is at stake. I know many of you are aware of what happened last time we went through the process of becoming an open and affirming congregation. Without going into a lot of detail, It caused many families to leave the congregation and was so controversial, it was never even put to a vote. Can you see why I personally might have pause and concern? Now, please know that I do believe this process is absolutely necessary. I have met incredible and loving people in this congregation whose love and support have given me the freedom to be me in this space. I have a rainbow flag hanging in my office. For the church to officially take this stance and become an open and affirming congregation, it opens the doors to more people like me. Now is the time to educate ourselves, explore questions, and seek answers. And I have full confidence that we will unanimously and joyously affirm all of God's children when we come to a vote to affirm and fully accept our queer siblings. Furthermore, there is not enough time this morning to address how immigrants, the BIPOC community, and other groups of people have been put on trial. And so we pray, save us in the time of trial. Now, we need to look at our church and how we put others in this space on trial. Now, I know I have. I've been here 9 years. I know a lot of y'all, sorry. I would be lying if I said I hadn't. I have actually heard congregants put the church leadership on trial for the way they cut their hair, or whether it's hanging in their face, or whether it's pulled back, or for how much makeup they did or didn't have on their face, and so much more. I have also heard church members put other church members on trial. I will not give examples, but you know it happens. We put people on trial all the time. Matthew 7 says that thou shalt not judge, lest you be judged. But girl, did you see what she wore to church last Sunday? Woo! Girl, Karen, last Friday night, did you see what she was doing with? And then she shows up to church this morning and be all nice and demure. Whew. I say that with a little tongue in cheek, but we put our congregants on trial. We mark them as guilty and we hold it against them. Save us in the time of trial. One of our biggest needs in our society is a sense of belonging to community. I have a clip we're going to show.
We have a rule at our house that no matter what, you belong here. No matter how goofy, awkward, afraid, wrong, it doesn't matter, you belong here. And so I think when we give our kids a platform like that at home, it gives them the courage to take risks outside of home. Does that make sense?
Because they feel safe coming back. No matter what happens, they always have a place to come home to.
Yeah. We have a rule at our house that no matter what, you belong here. No matter how goofy, awkward, afraid, wrong, it doesn't matter, you belong here. And so I think when we give our kids a platform like that at home, it gives them the courage to take risks outside of home. Does that make sense?
Because they feel safe coming back. No matter what happens, they always have a place to come home to.
Yeah.
To try to fit in here or maybe some other place. Have you ever accused someone of not fitting in here? I didn't fit in growing up. It was kind of weird. I was in band and choir and theater and honors courses and never really felt like I belonged to any of these groups. Maybe band a little bit because my dad was the director, but that's because my dad was the director. So when I had the opportunity to move to a new town my senior year of high school, I jumped at the chance so I could start being me. Loud, obnoxious, silly me. Well, it worked. Until I was too much and had to learn to fit in a new space. In all honesty, I never truly felt I belonged until I moved to Chicago. I found my community of love and acceptance at Broadway United Methodist Church, at Uncle Julio's Hacienda, where I was a server and a bartender, and in the many queer and safe spaces Chicago has to offer. When we pass the peace of Christ every Sunday, we are saying, the God that lives in me is the God that lives in you, and we are one. We have a rule at our church that no matter what, you belong here. That no matter how goofy, awkward, afraid, wrong, it doesn't matter. You belong here. And so I think when we give our congregants and staff a platform for that in church, it gives us the courage to take risks outside of church because we feel safe coming back, because no matter what, we have a place to come home to. Of all the places, this should be a place where we belong, exactly how we are. If you show up disheveled, you belong here. If you're having a bad day, you belong here. If you laugh at every joke, even the ones that aren't funny, you belong here. If your greatest joy is expressing praise through clapping, you belong here. If you love to express your praise and gratitude in silence, you belong here. If the music moves you to dance, you belong here. If you are rich or poor or anything in between, you belong here. If you're a Republican, you belong here. If you're a Democrat, you belong here. If you have no political affiliation or something in between, you belong here. If you are black, brown, beige, or white, or any other color in God's creation, and if you are gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, non-binary, straight, or any expression of God's beautiful creation, you belong here. Great God, save us in the time of trial, because all God's children belong.
When you're not sure who you really are, when all you feel is the shape of your scars, and you have more wounds than you can count, open your eyes, look all around. You aren't alone, this is your home. Come and remember who you are here. Do this to remember who I am. Come and remember you belong here. All belong here. When you don't know how to forgive, when locked doors seem like the only way to live, and you've got more questions than you can count, open your eyes, look all around. You aren't alone, this is your home. Come and remember who you are here. Do this to remember who I am. Come and remember you belong here. All belong here. At this table, come as you are, broken and bleeding's okay. and remember